Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we're looking at Johnny Copeland, and this is coming from 1984, and he's going to be playing through Devil's Hand. So let's get Johnny up on screen and see how he gets on. I'm just going to jump in here because we've got a lot to talk about so far. And what I love about these old performances, this is 1984, but just the way that the whole band get into the performance, and even with that brass section in the background, when they're not playing anything, they're dancing. They've actually got a little bit of choreography going, and it makes such a difference, just everyone being into the music, because obviously that will translate through to the playing and translate through to the audience as well. As you can see, everyone's absolutely into it here. And we've got a great vocal from Johnny here as well, and it's amazing to think that when he was 19 and he had his recording debut, he kind of signed his first deal, it wasn't a massive break for him. He didn't have a massive hit, but he was seen fundamentally as a vocalist, even though you can tell how great he is a player on the guitar, especially with that lead section, which we're going to be getting into. But he's got that great voice that he can carry off that lead vocal just seamlessly, like so many of those great blues artists could. They could connect with lyrics and with an audience vocally as well as through the voice of their guitar. And as you can tell from this video, Johnny's a natural entertainer and puts on such a great show live, gets the crowd involved, and that's very much what happened when he was 19 and 20 and he released those songs. He then literally gigged for the next 2 decades, and people were going out to watch him because of the music, obviously, but the entertainment as well. And it's not as if he had a massive multi-million selling hit, and that's where he was drawing the crowds from. It was just his live show, and that's very much how it used to be back in the day. Just great bands, and people went out to watch live bands and just go to a blues club and see a great band, someone like Johnny just absolutely killing it night after night. And you don't need to have a multi-million selling single when you've got great live music, because people will watch it and it just spreads through word of mouth of people just congregating at these venues and just enjoying great live music. And just getting into Johnny's lead solo there, because again, this is a prime example from a top blues player of how to play with expression, putting the emphasis on the simplicity of the lines, not really how many notes you can play in a second. It's having that ability to not overplay and that appreciation of melody and not overplaying. And that's something that is absolutely essential in the blues, because the blues is something that you want to connect to an audience with, and very rarely can you connect with an audience when you're just absolutely hammering them with notes in the face all night long. You really need to let people think about the note and listen to a note and hear that as a voice, and you'll never hear a singer shredding out notes through their vocal cords. There are always long phrases and long notes that are just being held with that expression on there, with that vibrato, and that's very much what the blues players do so well. And just a quick mention of the band as well, absolutely solid in the background here and tight as anything. Obviously bass and drums have got to lay down that solid foundation like I always say, but listen to the other elements we've got going on. The keys that are in there, it just adds so much to have keys in a performance in a band, but also in the blues. You get some really cool blues lines going off on that piano just in the background, but just really does set off the whole performance. And then of course the piece de resistance is that brass section, like I mentioned about them putting in the choreography, but just those stabs, just stabbing in with that brass just sounds so cool. And when you've got a blues band that are absolutely on it, and you've got all these different elements that absolutely perfectly combine together, and then Johnny's voice is that cherry on top, but also you've got the voice of Johnny's guitar that just sits on top of everything as well. So all of these elements interact so well to give that overall great performance. And very much with Johnny here, you get that impression, that gospel kind of feel to the performance. And this is what you'll find with top players, is that they're playing slowly enough in order to translate what's going on in their head onto the fretboard, because nobody thinks at the speed of shredding or alternate picking. Most of the time, in fact all of the time, any fast passage that you're playing through that's alternate picked and is a lot of notes a second is all subconscious. You can't sing that in your head and then relay it on the fretboard, because the notes follow too quickly in order for you to think of the note and then play it, because the next note's already happened before you even thought about it, let alone get the message from your head down to your hand onto the fretboard. So all of that is just subconscious. But the great blues players, like I said, slowly get down each idea on the fretboard so it's conscious. But let's get back into the video.
Please, Mr. Devil, go back where you belong. Get out of my life, leave me alone. I made one mistake, I thought the devil wouldn't drop by here. But believe me when I tell y'all, the devil is everywhere. I woke up early one morning, I saw the devil play his hand. Tell y'all he wrecked my life like a hurricane. That's no good devil, that's low down devil, that dirty devil, that doggone devil, that low down devil, wrecked my life like a hurricane. That doggone devil, that low down devil, that sweet devil, that doggone devil, that low down devil, wrecked my life like a hurricane. Oh, yeah.
And there we go, the video's about to cut out, so I thought I'd jump in there before it did. But you can see by the crowd, the way that everybody's clapping along, how much they're into the performance. And it must have been so great to have heard this firsthand, with that full band sound, with that brass section and everything just being so tight. It's no surprise really, because Johnny spent so long gigging, he absolutely had it down. He not only had down the playing, the singing, but he was already a seasoned performer by this time. We're looking at 1984 here. And to put that in perspective, it means that Johnny would have been 47 in this particular performance, and that means that the best part of 30 years he's been out there gigging, just working on his performance, his show. And that's why he's so natural, because it is second nature to someone like Johnny when you've been playing for so long. And you can see in this performance that Johnny's sweating quite a lot. He's got that full suit on and a tie, so it must have been pretty warm up there underneath those lights. But another thing that will make him work hard is that Peavey T60 guitar that he's playing. And it's interesting because you don't really see a lot of these out there in videos, and they were only made between 1978 and 1988. So this is almost bang in the middle, 1984, that he's playing it. But I think it was more of an affordable option than going for maybe a Les Paul. But the only trade-off really is the weight of it. It is a pretty weighty guitar. I haven't actually ever played one, but just from hearing it on the grapevine, that it is a heavy piece of kit. But listen to the tone, because that's always the most important thing about playing a guitar, is the sound of it. A lot of players were willing to put up with that extra weight for that sound, and especially the fact that it was still so affordable at the time. And even now, I've seen these guitars for $400, maybe $500, so it's a great sounding guitar for the price, considering even now it's still relatively cheap. And a year after this performance, Johnny shared the stage with Stevie Ray Vaughan, who invited him to come down and play, and I think that was at the Montreux Jazz Festival, and they played through Tin Pan Alley, and that video is on YouTube here, I think, somewhere, so you can go and check that out if you want to see Johnny and Stevie laying it down. A few years later, in 1987, this would have made Johnny 50 at the time. He won a Grammy with Robert Cray and Albert Collins for their compilation album, which was called Showdown, and that was for Best Traditional Blues Album. So again, very late in his life, 50 years of age, and still laying it down, still getting out there, still performing. Unfortunately, for the later years of his life, he died when he was aged 60, and that was from, he did have a congenital heart defect and had a heart transplant, and then was having another operation on that, and the heart transplant happened 6 months before the operation, which then they had complications with, and unfortunately he died at age 60. But these videos are great because we just get to look back at the way that Johnny played, the way that he expressed playing guitar, his great voice as well, and just being an all-round professional, and one of those guys that back in the day just absolutely lived music day in, day out. And when they did lay down the blues, it was so genuine because they'd been doing it so long, and they'd been living that life of just working away at it for 20, 30, 40 years. But Johnny Copeland, just a fantastic blues player, fantastic singer as well, and a guy that knew how to put on a show and engage an audience and just make it enjoyable. Just a great night would be had watching one of his gigs. But thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at. Keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one.